Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Angus IJB Audit Committee. I would remind all attendees that this meeting is being recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. I have agreed the attendance of some members remotely and would remind all remote attendees to mute their microphones when not speaking. For any members of the public watching, please note that all public committee reports, including details of specific recommendations, are available on the Council's website. I'd like to remind members that this is currently the pre-election period in light of the forthcoming UK parliamentary general election on the 4th of July 2024. With reference to Angus Council's pre-election guidance section 4, this guidance covers publicity which includes Angus Integration Joint Board meetings. And I would ask members to be mindful of the legal requirements in their discussions and debate during this meeting. As members are aware, Item 7, Report Number IJB 36/24 was not issued in line with Standing Order 5.1 at least 5 working days prior to the meeting. However, in accordance with the provisions of Standing Order 5.3 and as chair of this meeting, I determine that the report has been issued to members in sufficient time to consider the contents and determine that report IJB 36/24 be considered. And finally, I would like to change the order of item 11 and item 10 on the agenda for reasons that will become evident later on. It's essentially just a natural, logical progression. Anyway, that's what we want to do. So, without further ado, I go into item number 1, apologies. And Karen?
No apologies intimated, Chair.
Thank you. And item number 2, declarations of interest and statements of transparency. Has anybody got anything to declare? Nothing online. Nothing noted. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting, including action points. So we go on to item 3A. I hope everybody's read that through. And has anybody got any points they wish to raise or any items that are not covered by the agenda or disagree with any of the content? Please indicate. No objections, so that minute is accepted. 3B, we move on to is the action points update from Angus IJB Joint Board Audit Committee, and if I can pass over to Sandy, please, to summarise the chart.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So we have quite a few items going green, which is helpful. 1 or 2 things probably covered on today's agenda. We do have a couple of red items. One of them we will come to very quickly. The first one from regarding the internal audit planning and building in the review of the Chief Finance Officer role. We'll come to that quickly. I think we'll have that one dealt with by our August meeting. The final item is much more long-standing and has proved as a wee bit tricky for us to completely solve. We've had bits of it kind of moving into place and definitely making good progress with that. But we are hoping, before we close that one out, which was to do with arrangements regarding lead partner services, we are hoping to document our position regarding that on a number of domains, finance, clinical governance and things like that. And we just haven't got to that point yet, but we do hope to have that done relatively quickly, and I would hope to have that done by August. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sandy. Has anybody got any questions? I don't see any indications, so we'll move on to item number 4, which is the internal audit plan for 24-25. And clearly we don't have those papers in front of us, So, Sandy, have you got any background to that, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. We've just included this agenda note because on our work plan, the approval of the 24-25 internal audit plan is scheduled for this meeting. Again, you'll see from the agenda note, we are planning to bring this now back to the August meeting. We have had some discussions with our internal auditors, including Jocelyn, about the content of that plan. Some of the things that we're looking at are not things we would necessarily do in isolation, so we've got to kind of tie in with other partners or parties, perhaps NHS Tayside or the other two IJBs. So that's why the other two IJBs in Tayside, that's why it's just taken us a wee bit longer to get our plan ready to come to this group for approval. So we hope to have that for our August meeting. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Sandy. Is there any reason, other than the fact that it's on the work plan, that this report has to be considered at this point in time?
Well, we would always do it obviously at the start of the year, given it's a plan for 24-25. I know when we looked at this issue last year, we also deferred it from the plan date of June to August 2023, and we're effectively doing the same again. You're moving it back from June to August 2024. I think with hindsight, we'd probably schedule this in for the August date. Ideally, we'll have had conversations with our internal auditors about plans and firming them up. But I suppose the reality of it is sometimes when we're trying to work out our discretionary items, we're still going through the closing out of governance issues from the year before. And Jocelyn might want to comment further, but I suppose the other factor is we often do the internal audit work a wee bit later on in the year. So June is our aspirational date, but in practice that has meant last year and this year we've come to August. I'll let Jocelyn comment.
Jocelyn?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sandy. Yeah, I would agree that ideally we would like to have the plan here in June, right at the start of the year. I think though there are so many other factors that impact on that date, sometimes it isn't achievable. So our audit days for Angus IJB are actually part of the NHS Tayside internal audit plan, which isn't agreed at the moment because we've been waiting for the new strategic risk profile to come through. So I wouldn't want to have a plan without seeing that kind of information. So I think from my perspective, we would always be aiming for June, but August does feel more achievable. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jocelyn. It just seems that we do this every year now. It may be worthwhile considering when we come to review the work plan that we can have that discussion again. Thank you. Has anybody got any questions about anything that was discussed in the at this item? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 5, and that is the internal audit report follow-up actions. And again, I'll pass over to Sandy to go through that report, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This is our regular report where we describe where we are with responding to a series of internal audit recommendations, but also the governance actions plans, which we've now consolidated into this report as a separate appendix. There's no specific things I want to flag up here, apart from, of course, I'm going to caveat that by saying there are 2 things I want to mention. There's no big specific things I want to mention. Obviously happy to take any questions. What we have done is we've set out on in section 3.1 a proposal just to change and refresh some of the status categories we have, and hopefully everybody's comfortable with that. And otherwise, just to note that although there's quite a lot of action still in this, and I think it's probably about 5 pages, there is a good page worth of actions that have now gone blue to represent their completion. And I hope that as we continue the meetings over the next couple of cycles, we'll continue to see more actions get wrapped up and completed. But we will see more actions adding on to this, for example, from our internal audit report. But happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Sandy, and thanks for explaining the current status category definitions. It's a bit more meaningful rather than both of them being overdue. With amber and red, we've got a minor and major split now, which makes more sense. As regards the list of items, they seem to be there all the time, but work is progressing in the background. and hopefully now as we can apply more and more resource and attention to these post-COVID, these will diminish, and good to hear that there's a page worth of items that are going to disappear. With that, having said that, I'll just like to open it to the meeting. Has anybody got any specific questions about any of the items or any part of the content of the report? Okay, don't see any heads, don't see any no's. So we'll take that as accepted. Thank you very much, everybody. Right, we'll move on to item number 6, which, let me find it, is the Internal Audit Plan Progress Report. And again, I think that's Jocelyn. Or do you want to introduce it, Sandy? Jocelyn. Straight to Jocelyn, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this report sets out progress with the Angus IJB Internal Audit Plan for 23-24, and it also provides details of any relevant partner organisation internal audits that we've concluded. The detailed progress is set out at Appendix 1, and just to highlight that our internal control evaluation fieldwork was undertaken in Q4 of the year as planned, but that final report was delayed due to the lack of capacity in the internal audit team. So what we've done is we've combined the output of the ICE work with the draft 23-24 annual internal audit report, which is at the next agenda item. So the 23-24 internal audit plan is complete, and the non-discretionary aspects of the current year's work are ongoing. And we've already discussed the fact that the 24-25 plan will come here in August. I just wanted to highlight a couple of items from the reports from partner organisations. So we have 4 NHS Tayside reports, and I wanted to draw your attention to report T1023, Public Health Governance. Now that was a limited assurance report, and therefore it was presented in full to the NHS Tayside Audit and Risk Committee. So that audit concluded that the Public Health Directorate, whilst they have made numerous improvements, and we've seen improvements in reporting of assurances to the Public Health Committee, we also made some recommendations. So those were around ensuring clarity of public health objectives, making sure the population health risk is visible, further development of public health performance framework, and enhancements to the Public Health Committee's assurance reporting. So that was quite a complex report. There was a lot in there, and I'm pleased to say that we obtained some extremely robust responses as to how those recommendations will be addressed, and a lot of that work's already in progress. So really, just to give the committee assurance that that's underway. Of the 5 Angus Council reports, 2 of those provided only limited assurance. So the first of those was risk management, with recommendations on strengthening corporate risk management at pace, really looking to see progress in that area, implementing strategy, and the need to develop service level risk management. The second audit was IT business continuity, and there were recommendations to develop business impact assessments, review business continuity plans, and then recommendations arising from the testing of those plans and learning lessons from that process. So that's all I wanted to point out, but I'm happy to take any questions on the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Before I pass it on to the meeting, just want to hear from you, Jocelyn. Apart from the fact that there was a capacity issue, how do you rate the success of the internal control evaluation? Because that was quite a new thing for us, and it was intended to make things easier and faster. But clearly you've had some internal issues. But overall, do you think it's still a worthwhile thing to do or not?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do think it's a worthwhile thing to do. We were successful in finishing off a lot of the field work earlier in the year, and I hope Sandy would agree that did free up time whenever officers are really busy at year end. Ideally, I would have wanted to issue a nice report to give early warning of any issues. But unfortunately, because of we're two principal auditors down at the moment across FTF, and that really impacted. So it was disappointing in that respect. But I think a lot of the groundwork was done halfway through the year, and that did help with the annual report process, albeit we are still late. So I think we're hoping to recruit. We've just had approval to recruit to those posts, and the adverts will be going out this week. So I think all I can say is that we would be looking to move things forward next year, and to get you that reporting earlier in the year.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Yeah, well, hopefully we can see the benefit of it next year when things are easier. Sandy, have you got any comments on the report? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Jocelyn. I mean, I would agree. Although we've noted that the next report was kind of late in terms of getting to us, the actual fieldwork was completed earlier on in the year, and in terms of our overall workflow and therefore our I suppose capacity to respond to issues, that was probably better. In fact, I would say definitely better for us, and hopefully better for our internal auditors. I mean, the fact that we've got the report a wee bit late, which we see later on the agenda, I think we'll be able to manage our way through that, and still be able to take all the advice out of it that we need to. So I think I'm okay from that perspective, Chair, and I have obviously shared some thoughts with Jocelyn and her team already. The only other comment I maybe just make, and again I've shared this with Jocelyn and our team, is regarding the feedback from the NHST side and Angus Council reports. Jocelyn's obviously highlighted a few areas, and we are going to have a conversation to make sure that the content that we have in these reports is kind of I'm not going to say suitable for this committee, but it matches the kind of role that we as committee, yourselves as audit committee members and Angus have, and to make sure we get the balance between things that are more operational in their partners, but actually are of interest to us. We get that balance kind of right. So we'll have a chat about that. Whether that results in any change or not, I don't know, but it might. We'll just see.
Thanks for that, Sandy. Yeah, look forward to that, fruits of that labour. I'll pass the questions over to the meeting in general now. If anybody's got anything they want to say about item 6, or Kirsty.
It's more of a comment, so I think, Sandy, you covered it. I guess my question was about the limited assurance report on risk management and the improvement plan that comes from that for the Council, and how that interfaces with the work that we do here and the work in the IJB. So I think you've quantified that by saying there's a further conversation to happen, but I was just interested in how we make the connection between all of the significant work that happens in terms of risk management and audit of risk management versus what's been found in the Council audit.
I don't know if Jill perhaps does want to comment on that one, or at least mull that one over as well, because at some point, Kirsty, some of I think the thing you're thinking about there, we probably need to see not necessarily happen in the audit committee, but happen in the joined up nature of our operational responses to risk management and our risk management forums, and that's maybe the kind of thing that we can reflect on the back of this audit that's happened in Angus Council, but also, of course, there'll be a follow-up exercise on the back of that, and how we play into that is maybe one of the things that we can look to see come through that process. So it's that kind of thing that you're trying to make sure that things that are relevant to us kind of come out, and if there's things that are perhaps more operational in the Council, we maybe just try and get the balance of that right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kirsty. Thank you, Sandy. Jill, do you want to comment? No. Sandy's covered it. Thank you. Anybody else got any questions about item 6? I don't see any people wanting to speak, so we'll move on to the recommendations. Right. Basically, just to note the work undertaken regarding the internal audit plan. So I hope that's been approved. We'll move on to item 7 now, which is the paper we talked about at the start of the meeting, which is the 23-24 Annual Internal Audit Report, which is, I'll pass it over to Sandy to give us a brief breakdown of it, and then we'll have a discussion about it.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll introduce this, but I'll also pass over to Jocelyn. You know, as her team have obviously compiled the main body of this report, which is the Appendix 1. This is a report that we receive annually, and it's obviously an important part of our governance flow. And you can see that in Section 2. The report is designed to give the Audit Committee an independent view of where we are in terms of our overall adequateness and effectiveness of our governance framework. There's an important summarisation and conclusion of the Chief Internal Auditor's view of where we are. We eventually see that roll into reports later on in the agenda regarding the annual governance statement and the annual accounts. Just worth highlighting the work regarding recommendations 2 and recommendation 3. As a management team, as an executive management team within the IJB, we will give this report a good review. And we will in particular look at the responses to the action points that are raised in it, but we'll also look at all the other observations that are made in the report, and we'll feed that back to the Audit Committee at the next cycle of meetings, or the next meeting. I think from an Audit Committee perspective, it is worth just us not going into detail, but just at least acknowledging that our internal auditors have reviewed the assessment of some of the progress that we've described before. And I think we just need to use that as a time for us to sense check how we document and review our progress with some of the actions they've previously documented. So that'll be an important thing for us to reflect on by the time we come back to the next meeting. But otherwise, we will take this forward in our management teams, and we'll see a finalised version come back at the next meeting. But I think, Jocelyn, I can maybe just pass over to you to kind of make any comments on the report. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. This report does provide assurance in the overall systems of internal control, and that includes any of the full reviews that we've conducted during the year, plus an overview of areas where we haven't completed a full audit. We've covered all areas of governance. We've covered corporate, clinical and care, staff, financial and information governance. And as Sandy said, we have provided a positive opinion on the key arrangements in place at the end of the year. We've also summarised developments and made those 3 recommendations. I just wanted to touch on follow-up. In terms of follow-up, as auditors, we're always looking to evidence effective action to address our recommendations. So in this report, within each governance section, we've provided the latest position on implementation of previous recommendations. So you will see some slippage on quite a few of those areas. What we've done here is we've tried not to duplicate previous actions. You don't need to hear the same thing again, but we will sit down with management and agree new action dates for everything that remains outstanding. And sometimes it is difficult to quantify when things will be done, particularly whenever there are resource issues. But we'll sit down and we'll have a look at putting realistic and achievable dates on those. So on that same kind of topic within the report, we've emphasised the importance of prioritising outstanding actions and having it, addressing these systematically. So we've recommended an enhancement to the audit follow-up process and introduction of a follow-up protocol, just so that everyone knows what the expectation is and has a guide for what they need to do and how that should be reported. The aim of that really, and it's not just for audit follow-up, it's for all governance improvement actions. The aim is just to make sure that the IJB fully understands the implications if these actions aren't completed. So we already see some of that reporting coming through the financial reporting, but we want to make sure that there's a similar escalation process for all improvement action. And we've also recommended consideration of a strategic risk on delivery of key governance improvements. So that's really just to keep a kind of a watching brief on what is still outstanding and make sure, as I said, that prioritisation in place. Within the report, we've got some key themes starting on page 5 of the report, and I won't go through all of them, but I just wanted to draw a couple of these issues out. because these are the ones I think will be key to future success. So we've provided context on the internal and external environment. We've done that in all our Health Board and IJB annual reports. So we've referenced the widely reported difficulties in the external environment. So things like demand, the ageing population, widening health inequalities, the significant and unprecedented financial challenge, as well as the workforce pressures in the face of that growing demand. So overall, the report focuses on improvement and in building on the governance arrangements already in place. But in the context of that external environment, I would stress that even for a well-run organisation, things are really volatile and real challenges lie ahead. So the IJB has agreed the strategic commissioning plan and the plan to deliver it. That's all now in place, and what we're saying here is that management and governance arrangements really just need to be embedded to support delivery and really just make sure there's that linkage between strategy and those supporting documents, so between strategy and the delivery plan and the financial plan. We've noted that while there was an operational underspend for the year, this was mostly because of vacancies and unmet need, and the IJB has already acknowledged that the strategic commissioning plan may need to be reviewed. And the IJB isn't alone here. All public sector organisations across Scotland are facing those same pressures. And again, I would say that difficult decisions and prioritisations lie ahead. So supporting that, we've commented that finance needs to be at the heart of every decision, with that clear focus on transformation and doing things differently. And everyone in the organisation has a part to play in that. So again, looking at improvement actions, we have acknowledged that there's limited progress against some of those really quite difficult, long-standing governance issues, and we're seeing those coming through in the governance statement each year. The Blueprint for Good Governance stresses the importance of collaborative governance, and I would suggest that the October development session will be an opportunity to have a look at working together on the implementation of the integration scheme, and really picking out any areas that require to be strengthened in partnership. And as in previous annual reports, we've talked again about the importance of working well together and everyone fulfilling their role in the true spirit of integration. So that was a very, very quick whistle-stop tour of the annual report. But based on our internal audit work, I have concluded that reliance can be placed on the IJB's governance arrangements and systems of internal controls for 23-24. I haven't advised management of any concerns around consistency of the governance statement with information that internal audit are aware of, nor any concerns on the format and content of the governance statement, nor on the disclosure of all relevant issues. And if I may, I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank Sandy and the wider team and all the officers involved in the audit. We had excellent engagement once again, and we were delayed, but we've moved it on as quickly as possible, and hopefully it's a valuable report. And I'd also like to thank the internal audit team who completed all the work on the report. That's all I wanted to say, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Thanks for that comprehensive review of the report. Overall, it would seem that as an organisation, the governance is in reasonable shape, but I do take on board your comments about almost moving to another level of maturity in governance, in as much as we need to evidence the improvement better, and look forward to the discussions that the management team have and what they come back with on your recommendations for follow-up and new audit follow-up procedures. So yeah, that's good. And yes, we are acutely aware of the macroeconomic situation and how it affects us globally, and how we need to work more collaboratively and more, more innovatively. That certainly comes out in the report, and that kind of echoes the way we feel. So, Sandy, have you got anything you want to say to respond to Jocelyn's comments before I put out to the rest of the meeting?
Yeah, no, thanks, Chair. I mean, just to repeat, we will go through this in a good bit of detail with the management team. We won't just focus on the action points, which we will still document and follow up, but we will take out the other observations and advice from this report and start to orientate our management, the way we do things, to pick up some of the improvements suggested in this report. So we'll try and do that over the coming weeks in terms of getting the review of the report done, and then progress things over the coming months.
So when can we hope to see that at the next meeting?
Yeah, so this report is still kind of effectively a draft report until we've got our management responses in it. So it will reappear in our August agenda.
Thank you. Jill, have you got any comments you want to make overall about the organisation?
I think, thank you, Chair. I think a relatively good report to receive, and I think it demonstrates quite a fluid environment in how we respond and react to different things, but also take into account outcomes from previous audits. I think just to pick up on a couple of things and absolutely acknowledge that as a management team we've not had the opportunity to review in detail. Thankfully, there is a paper coming to IJB today in relation to the wider public protection approach now, which obviously incorporates the adult support and protection, but just to acknowledge that I have picked that up in the report in terms of that recommendation. Other than that, Chair, I think I'm quite pleased with the report and the recommendations are there, and we will continue to work, as Sandy said, with the wider team and internal audit to progress the actions without adding to the ongoing action list that we have. So we'll aim to get that down to a page and a half, hopefully, soon.
Thank you, Jill. Anybody got in the general meeting got any comments, questions or otherwise? I don't see anybody. Sorry, Jill, right.
Just to come in and I think I know we've got another report, but just to thank Abby as well as Sandy for all of their input around the work to support governance across the partnership and the CCPG team as well.
Oh, yeah, CC Abby's appeared on the screen there. Yes, thank you very much, Abby, and especially the risk sessions are very useful for the IJB in general. Hopefully we'll get that all sort of documented and passed around to people that couldn't make it. But thanks for your efforts. Yeah, thanks. Anybody got any comments generally other than that? No. Thank you. Well, move on to the recommendations, and they are that the committee review and accepts the report in the appendix and the content of evaluating internal control environment. You can read it for yourselves, and considers the issues raised in this report, notes the fact that the executive management team will determine a series of responses to the action points, and I'll come back at the next meeting, and notes that a finalised version of this report will be submitted to the next meeting.
Chair, can I just ask that the members agree that report? The recommendations.
Oh, do the members agree the recommendations? Yeah, I'm just reading them out for people to nod away at it. Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Right, move on to item number 8. Thank you. So that is the Risk and Resilience Annual Report. This is part of our work plan. So it's Gillian as the presenter. Is it Gillian, are you going to speak to this report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to bring the annual report around risk and resilience within the Health and Social Care Partnership. I think just to acknowledge the conversation that we had earlier in relation to the Angus Council internal audit. report on risk management, and give assurances that within the partnership we do review those reports, and if there's any learning from that within the partnership that we can take, then we will certainly take that on, and we work closely with our risk colleagues in Angus Council as well. So the report before you is our annual report on risk and resilience. Chair, you have mentioned the work that we have been progressing through the lunchtime sessions as part of the ongoing discussions and engagement with IJB members around our current risks, and ensuring that they are up to date with the information around those risks. I think just to acknowledge that there is work ongoing across our partner organisation, NHS Tayside, in relation to risk, and their strategic risk profile is due to come to NHS Tayside board tomorrow. That may result in a bit of a shift to us in terms of our strategic risks going forward and how they are included. I'm going to hand over to Abby, who has done all of the work in terms of pulling the report itself together, but fair to say that the amount of work that has been progressed over the last year has been quite significant in relation to risk and resilience, and that has included the learning opportunities from Storm Babette as well. So I'll just hand over to Abby to take us through the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jill. I appreciate that you'll have read the report, so if I may, I'll just draw your attention to a few highlights from the last year. Strategic risk profile and matrix is detailed in Appendix 1, and you will note there's been some movement in our strategic risk profile over the last year. As a result of effective controls and planned mitigation, we've seen a reduction in the risk score for the following risks: so strategic risk 24, commission services, unmet need, and strategic risk 8, workforce optimisation. The planned risk score was met and sustained for strategic risk 14, adult support and protection, and strategic risk 21, equalities, and this resulted in these risks being archived in January 2024. A number of new and emerging risks have been identified, and these are detailed in page 6 of the report. As Jill had mentioned, we've held a number of lunchtime bite-sized drop-in sessions over the last few months that focused on each risk and gave IJB members the opportunity to discuss the IJB's risks with the risk managers, and feedback from those who attended the sessions has been positive. We have recorded these sessions and they will be shared with those members who were unable to attend, and they will be given an opportunity to raise any questions or to meet again to discuss any issues that they have. And this links back to the internal audit action around that collaborative working with IJB members around the strategic risk register. The IJB's risk appetite will be reviewed and updated in July. Again, we're doing things a little bit differently around that, and we're going to do that through an MS Forms followed up with a meeting. So communication will be shared with members later this week. As Jill said, work continues to progress in relation to our resilience plans. We've established a resilience planning group that will oversee the development of the IJB Category 1 responder function, and a working group has been established that will develop and implement the systems and processes required to fulfil that duty under the Civil Contingencies Act requirements. We suggest today that the report provides reasonable assurance to the Audit Committee in relation to the risk management and resilience processes. We ask you to consider the report and the recommendations detailed in section 1. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Right, has anybody got any questions for Abby? Jill's got.
Thank you, Chair. It's not really a question for Abby, I guess, just to give Jocelyn some assurance that we have picked up that in our report we've reduced our risk around commission services and adult support protection, but these are two areas that you've picked up in the internal audit report. So we'll take that away and have a think about how that's happened in some ways, and just make sure that we are ensuring that our systems and processes are in place, but also have a bit of reflection on what our perception is compared to internal audit.
Thank you, Jill. Jocelyn, are you okay with that? You just want to say anything about that?
Yeah, Yeah, I think I would welcome that. I mean, it's not so much about the risk, it's just making sure that the assurances are correct and that there are no gaps in that assurance. So yeah, happy to work together on that and have a conversation about that.
Right, thank you. That's it's all good stuff. Has anybody else got any comments or questions? Okay, well, I would certainly, from my point of view, in the several years that I've been on the audit committee, I've witnessed the risk management in this organisation as improving substantially from just barely mentioned before at this meeting. It's now very visible of all the work that's being done and all the assurances, so and all the evidence and kind of risk appetites and everything that goes around the risk management process. So that's it's been very encouraging watching that, and it's thanks very much to Abby again for the efforts and continuing way she presents this information in a very clear way. So having said all that, I would just like to, if there's no further comments or questions, move on to the recommendations. And Abby's kind of mentioned some of them, but I'll just list through them. Review and accept the strategic risk profile and risk rating matrix, accepts the new and emerging strategic risks, acknowledge the progress that's been made in relation to resilience planning, acknowledge the requirements to review the IJB risk appetite and provide the view on the level of assurance this report provides, and therefore the level of assurance regarding risk management systems and processes within the partnership. Is everybody happy with those recommendations to accept them? I don't see any dissent, so we take that as accepted. Thank you. We move on to item number 9 in the agenda, which is the directions update. Okay, Sandy, do you want to introduce this report, please?
Yep, thanks, Chair. So this is a half-yearly report that we bring to the Audit Committee. It's part of our overall governance and accountability arrangements, and it's where we set out where we are with things that we have directed NHS side or Angus Council to do in terms of IJB decisions. The report doesn't go into the details of those decisions, obviously links included, because we're not kind of venturing into the operational details. We are really just letting everybody know where we are with these things. And Appendix 1 does that. We're now down to 3 live directions, one of which we're noting as being complete regarding the gables, as you can see from Appendix 1, with 2 directions being kind of ongoing and regarding primary care. So that's a summary of kind of where we are. What we have reflected in towards the end of section 3 of this report, on the second page of the report, we've noted that the IJB has not issued any new directions since December 2023, and it's maybe just worth noting that. I've said reflect in the report, but I think it's probably worth just noting that. That is ultimately a function of the reports that we have taken to the IJB rather than things that have come into the Audit Committee. And I think it's probably fair to say that in any period of time, the mix of reports that the IJB will receive will be different. Some reports automatically lend themselves to generating a direction, some reports don't. And I think we just need to kind of note that the reports over the last few months have not generated directions. And that's something as IJB members rather than Audit Committee members we can keep an eye on, but I just thought it was worth noting that point. Otherwise, Chair, happy to take any questions.
I'll pass over questions without any comment from me. No. Okay. Right, we'll move on to the recommendations then. So review the status of any current directions issued by Angus IJB, and we request a further update to be prepared for the committee meeting in December. Are we happy to accept those recommendations? Yes, thank you. Right, we'll move on to the last two, which we said earlier at the meeting we would reverse the order of them, but they are closely linked with each other. We should take number 11 first, which is
Sorry to interrupt, but we're not able to hear online.
can you hear now?
Yes, we can.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Right, well, I'll just go through all that. I didn't press the right button, so I'll go through it all again. It'll be totally different this time, of course, what I say. As we agreed, or as we mentioned at the, and agreed at the start of the meeting, we now move on to the two closely linked items 10 and 11, and we're going to reverse the order because that's the more logical way to proceed with this agenda. And item number 11 is the, just read it out again, the 23-24 IJB Annual Governance Statement. And I'll pass that straight over to Sandy for comment. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So part of me wants to say many of you have seen reports like this before, but of course I'm acutely aware we do have new members around the table and you won't necessarily have seen reports like this before. But it is clearly, this is, as you'll understand from reading it, is an annual report that we bring together. It's an important document because it summaриses where we are with our governance arrangements. It builds on the report we saw earlier on from our internal auditors, and it sets out our view of our governance arrangements, including reflecting on the feedback from our internal auditors. It's an important document because we share it at the main, we build it into our annual accounts, and ultimately, hopefully at the end of this meeting, this will be an integral part of the annual accounts that we share with Mark and his team for the audit process. The report, we set out in section 2 the background of the report and what it's trying to cover. It includes things like the scope and responsibility of IJB and our governance framework, which hopefully will feel familiar to most of you, but it also highlights where we are on some important issues. And we've highlighted issues from a governance perspective that we felt it was worth documenting and describing in a bit more detail. For example, regarding mental health, governance arrangements, how to protect adults with incapacity. Things that people have seen in other forums, but we're bringing them together in this overall governance statement. The report does include reference to the internal audit report that we mentioned earlier on, or have seen earlier on today. As I say, ultimately it will be shared with our external auditors. We will also share this report, assuming it's accepted today, with our partners, NHS Tayside Angus Council, and our neighbouring IJBs where we have lead partner arrangements. That's Dundee and Perthwick and Ross IJB. That's to provide them with reassurances about our governance arrangements for things that they are involved with us. Equally, we will seek reciprocal assurance confirmations from our partners regarding things that they are overseeing or involved in on our behalf. So I'm happy, Chair, to take any questions on the cover report or the body of the appendix. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Sandy. Move on to questions from anybody. This is a summary report of everything that happened in 23-24. We've seen a lot of it, as Sandy says, in different forms. This brings it all nicely together and explains the governance arrangements for each of the functions and services as listed. So it's a useful document to summarise what shape we were in over the last year. So, anybody got questions? Jill, thank you.
Apologies, Sandy, because I haven't had the chance to ask this question since coming back from leave. It's just in relation to, on page 99, further development issues, and I know numerous conversations take place around large hospitals set aside, and I suppose it's just to be clear around what is the actual area for improvement around large hospitals set aside. Is it from a financial perspective or is it from a performance perspective? I think that would be helpful just to clarify.
From this report's perspective, this report in particular will deal with the governance arrangements rather than the performance perspective, to make sure that we have a mechanism that works and reflects the responsibilities of both partners, and we perhaps deal with, as you mentioned, the financial implications or resource implications. So it's about, from this perspective, it would be about having the governance arrangement in place. There is, though, an important performance perspective, and we do allude to that in the IJB reports themselves, and we comment on the changes in demand patterns in terms of our use of acute hospital activity. This report, though, and from a governance perspective, is less about the performance itself, and it's more about the arrangement. Okay, thanks.
Thank you for explaining that. It's kind of fairly fundamental to audits, isn't it? We could have 100% super governance system and a 0% operational success, but the governance was good. So yeah, this is mainly from a governance point of view, and some of these long-standing issues seem to go on and on and on, but it's hard sometimes to understand where the problems arise. Again, it's an operational issue. I'm sure that people are working hard on these things. But from a governance point of view, it's the systems are there to note the fact that this progress is extremely slow. Has anybody got any comments on the governance statement? Further comments, further questions? I don't see any. Okay, we'll move over to the recommendations. There's 3 of them. It's recommended that this committee considers and approves the statement and authorises the chair of the committee to write to Angus and NHS Tayside, Perth and Kinross to confirm the adequacy and effectiveness of our governance arrangements for 23-24, including sharing of the latest version of this statement. And thirdly, that Chief Finance Officer confirms assurances with respect to Tayside, NHS Tayside, Angus Council, Dundee IJB and Perth and Kinross IJB prior to the next Audit Committee meeting regarding reliance being placed on the systems of control within these organisations in the context of impact on Angus IJB. So are we, a bit of a mouthful, but it's all pretty self-evident. Are we happy to accept those recommendations? Thank you. And one further word from Sandy.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Nothing to do with what we've just said, but just it's a useful lead-in to the comment I'm about to make. In this report that you've just seen, we do talk about the membership of the Audit Committee. Just a reminder to members, well, we've obviously, we've got a couple of apologies or absences today. We have only got 6 members of our Audit Committee right now, so we do have 1 vacancy. That's an issue that we would deal with through the IJB. Because Kirsty and Nikki, have come on board this year, we weren't rushing to get a 3rd new member. We wanted to let this configuration of membership settle in, but we will come back to the issue of filling that 7th vacancy, probably by the time we get to our August IJB meeting. So I just wanted to use this opportunity when we see that in front of us to link that up. And it's also perhaps fair to say we have had on our IJB board, which is of course where we get our members from, certainly in terms of the NHS Tayside non-exec memberships, there's been a bit of changeovers there. So some of the people who might be useful candidates for coming onto the Audit Committee there haven't been people in those posts. But I hope we can get that membership issue solved, or at least considered at the August IJP meeting. So I thought I'd just mention that one here. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. You kind of stole my thunder. I was actually going to use the chair's report at the IJB to tout for an extra member, but I'll still do that. Thank you. Thanks for the reminder. Okay, can we move on to item number 10, which is the last item on the agenda apart from the date of the next meeting. We'll just get our page numbers right. Okay, now this is the unaudited annual accounts for 23-24. And again, that's Sandy, if you can introduce that report to us, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So certainly for accountants, this is a really big report. It's a big kind of summarisation of a lot of the accounting reporting we've done throughout the year. And of course, we do a lot of other things like financial planning, but this really is kind of an endpoint in terms of financial reporting. I've got my colleague Jane Mugg here today, who will be happy to take any questions, but has also been a major contributor to this report, getting as far as it has done today and compiling our annual accounts. The cover report notes the formalities about the construction of the accounts and the guidance that we are following. It just provides a quick set of bullet points about the content of the annual accounts, and that should be relatively familiar to people that have seen these documents before. I'll touch on one or two things in a second. It also notes that there are some things that are still moving inside the annual accounts where we've got some red text. And I think, again, hopefully when people look at these things, it'll be evident why those things are in red. Hopefully, if this report and set of accounts is accepted, we'll be able to share it with Mark's team before the end of the month, which is our timeline for submitting this to our external auditors. And we'll also put this report as a draft into the public domain as a copy of our unaudited annual accounts. In terms of the accounts themselves, which is Appendix 1, the content is trying to meet the formalities that we have to respond to and the directives we have to respond to. We have a management commentary. The management commentary is not trying to bring new information into the public domain or into the audit committee. It's really meant to be a summary of our journey during the year, and also kind of reflecting on some of the planning perspectives that people are aware of. It also references things like risks and performance. And particularly with regard to performance information, we have a performance report going to our IJB this afternoon. The governance statement included here is the report you've seen 5 minutes ago, so it gets embedded in here. A lot of the financial information here, you've seen that picture emerging throughout the year. A year-end financial summary is again shared with the IJB this afternoon. So again, that information, the information you see here regarding the financial position, is consistent with what you see at the IJB. It's just worth noting that the IJB meetings themselves, we always report management accounting information. This set of accounts reports more of a financial accounting position, and the reconciling difference is usually changes in and out of our reserves, and reflecting things that have been agreed regarding our reserves. And in that context, it is just worth noting that the IJB's reserves, which are set out in one of the notes, I think it's note 10 in the accounts, and I'll mention this afternoon, the IJB's reserves are, sorry, it's not note 10, it's note 9. The IJB's reserves are relatively high compared with other IJBs in the country. And that's probably a reflection of where individual IJBs are in terms of their financial positions in any given year. Other IJBs may already be in positions where they're overspending on a year-by-year basis and are therefore already net consumers of their reserve balances, whereas we haven't got to that point yet, although that would be something that might fall out of some of the financial trajectories that we've shared elsewhere. So different IJBs will reach different places at different times. Chair, that's a quick summary. Between myself and Jane, we'd be happy to answer any questions, and particularly we might want to see if Mark's got any kind of reflections on the accounts as they're coming, not in detail because I know he's not done his audit, but just any reflections at this stage. And we will obviously be working with Mark's team, all being well, closely over the summer months prior to their audit being complete. Thanks, Chair.
Sorry, I didn't press the button. I'll say that all again. Jane, before I move on to the next stage, can you say a few words, because you did most of the work on this, a lot of the work anyway.
Thank you, Chair. I think Sandy's really summarised the key points that we'd want to highlight at this stage.
Okay, thank you. I had one question, well, a couple of questions. One was, we've been asked to note it, and do we get another look at this before it gets onto the approved stage? Because there's a few things in here that, for instance, on page 52, if you look at the priorities for the next strategic commissioning plan, there's 4 of them, but I believe there's only 3 now, so there's an inaccuracy there, and I think there are other things that are to be decided, to be agreed in red throughout it. So is this, or what are we being asked to approve here, just the accuracy of it, or just the general drift of the thing? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So we are looking today to get confirmation that we can submit this set of unaudited annual accounts to our auditors by the end of June. That's what we're looking for today. So effectively, that means are the members of this group content for these to go to our auditors by the end of this month? I think we've said in the report that all the elements in red, we will be reviewing those elements before they actually get submitted. 1 or 2 things will be dependent on the IJB this afternoon, and in fact, Chair, the point you made about the priorities is one of those points, because we will be reviewing that after the after this afternoon's meeting. We will correct that. During the audit process, we are likely to receive copies of things like the updated annual performance report, and we've already agreed with Mark's team, because that's due out in July during the audit process, that we will update or review the performance information as that happens. But this essentially, as long as people are comfortable about it, we will work again over the next 2 days. We will then submit this version to our auditors.
I mean, I agree that the next strategic plan has little reflection on what happened last year. And you have to question why we put it in here anyway, other than just mention it. It's the general trend strategically, and the fact that it does highlight the fact that we need to work collaboratively to meet the challenges. But yeah, with that explanation, I'm happy to accept that. But I'd like to ask Mark if he's got any comments, early comments on this report.
Thanks, Chair. No, to be honest, as Sandy said, we've not had a detailed review of the accounts yet. Obviously, that takes place after the approval of the draft today. Obviously, we'll have several queries and comments after that process takes place. But yeah, at this time, I think Sandy's reflections are an accurate one. Thanks. Thanks,
Mark. Just pass it to the meeting in general. Has anybody got questions? Kirsty, you're looking...
No, I mean,
you're just nodding.
I'm just nodding in agreement. So, as Sandy pointed out, this is new to some members of the committee, but it appears extremely thorough, and I wouldn't have any additional comments or questions. So, happy to approve.
Thank you. Anybody else got any comments? It's, for a lot of us, it's familiar format. The content changes. Nothing to ask Jane. She came here, took the trouble to come here. No? Oh well, thank you anyway. All right, I'll move on to the recommendations then. There are 2 of them to note. We're asked to recommend. We're asked to approve that We're asked to note the background regarding compilation of this year's unaudited accounts, and review the unaudited accounts and confirm the submissions of the unaudited annual accounts to the IJB external auditors, which we've heard from already. So I guess by the fact there wasn't many questions, we're happy to approve that. Yes, generally. Thank you very much. And that takes us on to the last item on the agenda, which is the date of the next meeting. And that will be on Wednesday, the 28th of August at 11:30 in the Town and County Hall, Forfar. It'll also be a hybrid meeting. So thank you everybody for your attendance and your participation.
John, can you stop the